Thank you, Ann, and welcome everyone. Thanks for attending. We're always very appreciative when you carve some time out of your business day to come listen to us talk. We are finding these Skype-focused webinars are extremely popular, and it's not surprising. We know there's a lot of interest out there. Although what we do get asked quite a bit is, why are you talking to us about Skype? And so sometimes it's good to just do a little level set of who we are and kind of how we've gotten to the position where we're comfortable having this conversation. We've been developing communication software for a long time. We have millions of users using our CXE product for a lot of different solutions. We're only going to talk about one of those today, but those of you on the webinar invitation list know we do one of these every other week or so and talk about the various other solutions as well. We are recognized as a leader in the UC area in a number of different parts of the solution space, and we are also identified as a Microsoft major partner, both because their involvement with us, or I guess our involvement with them in some of the Skype opportunities, and then of course we're a certified platform partner in both communications and messaging. And the reason we do that is because we build unified communication software, and we have to understand the environment around us. We've learned over the years that there's different facets to communications for a company, and you have to pay specific attention to the different ones. Individuals, that's pretty straightforward. The mobility, that's a big challenge today. We have lots of applications for mobile employees. On the other side of the slide, the businesses, the core call processing piece, we do a lot of that. Our general Skype solution falls into that category. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about teams or collaboration. Teams have gotten much more complex. It used to be a team would be 5 or 6 people that got in a room down at the end of the hall and worked on a project. And it's just not like that anymore. You have lots of different teams doing lots of different things in new and challenging ways. So we're going to talk about some collaboration software we have for specific types of teams, and we're going to talk about it in the sense of how it enhances the Skype experience when you go to enterprise voice. If you look at who we deal with, we're looking for all sorts of customers. A lot of our activity is replacement of legacy systems. People have kind of aged out of that first round of messaging and unified communication solutions, and they're looking to upgrade, and we're a very good choice for that because of our legacy feature functionality. At the same time, we stay on top of things, so we have full cloud offerings, we have IP integrations, and we have this new Skype for Business piece that we're going to talk about. And along with it, the same package that we sell is a best-of-breed UC solution in a number of areas. The real strength of our product comes from the fact that once you take the step into having CX as a product in your environment, you now can take advantage of all of the different pieces. It's not like you buy a different server for unified messaging and then a different one for personal assistant. This is all software that we just license and turn on our core server. So it's very tightly integrated, and it makes for a very good user experience. And if you look at our core platform, this is what gives us the ability to do that. Unlike most of our competitors, we don't have different point solutions that we tie together. We actually have a solution that's integrated. It's fully integrated. So the same lines that bring it in for voicemail and Find Me, Follow Me, and the call center app we're going to look at today, and custom IVR apps, everything is running on one platform. And that gives us some very unique capabilities. If you look specifically at Skype for Business, what we've been able to do is sort of watch the market develop. And it's interesting, as we started talking to people 3 or 4 years ago, when the strongest movement really started to show itself out there, where people were looking at and moving to the Skype Enterprise Telephony product, we found there's really 2 types of customers. There's a few, not very many, who simply said, oh, I'm going to take out my legacy phone system environment and move to Skype for the reasons that we're actually not going to cover on this webinar, but Skype certainly offers some very interesting functionality as the telecommunications portion of your infrastructure. Most people were a little more cautious, and they chose to migrate to Skype over time. And in a large enterprise, what that meant is you would actually have part of your environment going to Skype while part of it remained on the legacy systems. And this was a very strong indicator to customers they should be looking at us, because we can connect to everything in a legacy environment. No matter how old or how new your systems are, we can integrate them into a single system. So in this way, when you decide to start moving branches and locations or even departments over to Skype for Business, you aren't creating technology islands. You aren't fencing off that group of workers. You're actually allowing the single integrated system to connect all your workers. And then over time, as you migrate those other sites, they all typically will end up on the Skype for Business piece. The way we've been able to do this is completely unique. If you go to Skype for Business as your telephony infrastructure, you have two choices in the world for call processing and messaging. One is Exchange that's the inherent Microsoft piece that comes along with the licensing, and plenty of people go in and take a look at that, and that's their starting point. The other option is us. We're the only other ones out there that have figured out how to sit behind Skype and basically be the integrated call processing and messaging piece. So you would take Exchange and not deploy that. You'd still deploy Exchange, of course, but instead of Exchange you'd deploy our server. We hook to the Skype in a very similar manner to what Exchange does. Basically, we're a trusted application. You program up Skype, and now direct calls into our call processing engine, forwarded busy calls from Skype clients, all of that integration is now capable. And we have a whole series of other webinars that talk about the various pieces of it. Today what we're going to talk about is one of the issues where we found that Microsoft has gotten us involved in going to customers to solve some of the issues that they found when they use the full Skype and Exchange environment. A lot of our business references come from Microsoft when people either have started to deploy or looking at deploying, and looking at the feature set of Exchange and Skype, they find some things that they aren't satisfied with. They feel there's some business processes they have going on right now in their legacy world they need to move forward, and on its own Skype can't do that. And one of those has to do with internal call management, internal call distribution. Now, if any of you are looking at Skype for Business, you know it doesn't really have a full ACD functionality. There's plenty of third-party packages that can sit there and be the full ACD functionality. But there's other kinds of call distribution where Skype also falls a little short. And for those, we have a specific package, and we call it TeamQ. And the tagline under TeamQ tends to change depending on whose slides you're looking at, because we can't really find a nice, short, succinct way to describe what it does where people can look at it and say, oh, sure, that. That's because this is sort of a new way of handling call distribution. This has to do with those teams we talked about, that collaboration. As teams and how they work change, so do the call handling methods you need to support. So while you might look at using response groups to do some of this, you will quickly find response groups has limitations in this kind of call management. So let's look at what we have here. Certainly in a PBX environment, you have hunt groups, or in the case of Link, you have response groups. And they can do the basic distributing of calls out. And there's some small groups that this is fine for. And then mostly on the other end, you have the real contact center, multimedia contact center pieces where you have process workers, 100 people in a room doing the same thing basically. And the concept here is let's distribute those calls as fast as we can. Let's keep great records, and let's shave a couple of seconds off those calls if we can. And for that, you really need a multimedia contact center and some sort of ACD system. But in between those two groups, there's this another group of kind of informal call center or informal work group. They are not so much process workers as they are knowledge workers. And what that means is they don't just have the same business flow every time. They have personal workflows. I tend to talk about IT support desks because they fit this model and because everyone's familiar with them. So in an IT support desk, you're not just taking calls, hanging up, taking the next call, and hanging up. Quite typically, you would take a call, you'd talk to that person, you'd hang up from that call, maybe you'd remote into their system, go download a software patch, solve that problem, and then when you were ready to take another call, you'd come back. And a traditional ACD system doesn't really support that model. And hunt groups, while you can run it off hunt groups, you're missing a lot of the strengths you can get if you can manage those calls more effectively. So that's what TeamQ is for. TeamQ is an informal workgroup or call center application, and you can have multiple ones coming off of a single CXE system. These will be smaller teams. These will be 25 agents or less, and you'll see why. as we look at what it does, although you can have up to 50 teams on a system. And while we do support a push model call distribution like an ACD system, where when an agent hangs up, the oldest call is pushed to them, that's probably not how you're going to use TeamQ. The strength of TeamQ comes from the other way it functions, which is a pull model. With a pull model, what we're going to do is we're going to interface with the caller, we're going to gather information, we're going to put that information on a screen, and we're going to let the agents interact with that screen and control their own call routing, and that allows them to be more efficient. And this is sort of a skills-based routing pull model call distribution system, and we'll see how that works in just a second. And of course, it's loaded with all the other supervisor interface reporting packages and things like that. There's a couple of reasons people are very interested in TeamQ. As I said earlier, it overcomes some of the limitations from response groups. It's also, once you deploy the CX system as your call processing and messaging system, adding TeamQ is very inexpensive. Definitely the least inexpensive way you can get any functionality like this. But it also gathers metadata from the callers, and that metadata becomes a key part in the call routing decisions. The way this works is very simple. If we are connected to the phone system, TeamQ is ready to go. No CTI link, no extra servers, no extra functionality, just licensing. We turn it on, and we're ready to take calls. And here's how it works. Call comes into whatever phone system. In this case, we're talking about Skype for Business. The call routes through to the CXE system. We answer the call. We actually run the caller through a script. We gather information, and then we put an entry on the agent's screen with that information on there. And then the agents use that screen to decide which call is the correct one for them to take. Let's kind of go through this process. You can get an idea what it does. So I have your typical setup here. I can have agents log in internally on the LAN. I can have a VPN connection with agents working from home. As long as they have a Windows workstation, a data connection back to the mothership, and a phone number that I can transfer calls to, you can deploy this any way you want. Call comes in, and the first thing we're going to do is answer the call and find out a little bit about the caller. So welcome to the help desk. We're going to confirm their callback number. We use this not just for callbacks, but we use this for some farming, some data farming we're going to do as well. So we're going to confirm that. They press 1, we've captured the correct call number. If they press 9, they can put a different callback number in. This is also optional. Every step we're going to talk about except the first greeting could say, welcome to the help desk, please stand by for the next agent. Everything else we're going to talk about, you pick and pull from the menu as you create the queues. And each one of your queues can function in a different manner. So now we have their callback number. We're going to ask for 1 or 2 pieces of numeric input. In this case, I'm just asking for 1. Enter your employee number. This is an internal help desk app I'm emulating here. And then we can also run 1 or 2 menus for input. So in this case, I'm just doing 1. For support on Windows 7, press 1. For support on Office product, press 2. For help with your network connection, press 3. For everything else, press 4. Now we have an idea what this caller wants and where they're going to go, so we give them some choices. Your position in queue is 4. The estimated wait time is 45 seconds. To hold for a representative, press 1. To leave a message, press 2. Or to request a callback, press 3. And then to return to the previous menu, press the star key. Now, some of this is really optional information. Like your position in queue is 4. If you're really doing a pull model with different agents pulling calls based on their differing skill sets, probably you're not going to announce the position in queue or the estimated wait time, because it's not necessarily homogeneous across all the callers, because depending on what you're calling in for, my queue may be staffed slightly differently. So if I say to hold for a representative, then we're going to hold that call. You have your choice of some announcements and hold music to play. If I say leave a message, then that caller will be put into a CX mailbox, usually typically associated with the queue itself, and then that queue is probably lighting a message waiting light on the supervisor's phone or on the agent's phone. If they say to request a callback, then we're going to say, fine, your callback has been queued. We're going to disconnect that caller, and now that same entry still stays on the screen, and it times out and ages out the same way. The difference is when the agent goes to take it, it'll let them make a call back to that callback number. So we're not tying up resources on the system during that hold time, and we're also not having any kind of effect on the user's life. They don't have to be sitting there on hold waiting, and that callback is a very popular feature. Once I've answered all those questions and a call does go in queue, it now appears on the screen. Now what you're seeing here is all the calls we're handling right now for this queue, and they're being handled in different ways. That first one, if you look at, is actually Agent Tom is on that. So there's a call that Tom took, and he's on that call. And then down below it, there's another call that Mark took, and you can see who called and what they wanted. Now down below that, there's a call that says on hold for Tom, even though Tom is on a call up above it. And that's because Tom looked down and probably saw the call come in from Bill. He'd probably talked to Bill earlier. Bill had said, I have a problem. He described it, and being a good tech support agent, Tom said, reset your system, and if that doesn't fix it, call me back. So Tom went and got on another call, and he looked down, and sure enough, Bill called back in. So Tom highlighted that call and clicked hold. He's now holding that as his next call. So we start to see the value of using the metadata from the calls in creating more efficient routing, because you really don't want Bill to go to another agent and have to have him go through all that process again. There's a couple of calls waiting. Somebody's waiting for network support. Somebody's waiting for Win 7 support. Now, depending on your agents, maybe everybody is trained on everything, in which case they could just hit the next call button. It would send them the oldest call. But if you have disparate data training sets for your agents, which is very typical, then what I would do when I got ready to take a call is look at that selection, find the oldest call that I was qualified to take, highlight that call and say, take call. That call would now be transferred to me. I would be on that call. The line would go out to a different color. It would show my name there. And basically, that's how we run the queue, based on the metadata gathered from the callers. Now, you notice what I asked the callers was numeric information. But we're capable of doing data dips from that information. So I took that employee number, and I went out into a database somewhere. As long as there's a database that's accessible with a COM API, a web services, a stored procedure, something along those lines, I can bring back information. I can't just bring back one piece. I can bring back many pieces. So I could have gone and, from that same data dip, populated the identification screen with the user's name and populated maybe their computer model number or their building location or their maintenance type contract. So I can have many columns here that I'm pulling information out of those databases. The databases are simple. We actually create them as part of the install. There's a flat charge for a data dip. It's very inexpensive. And the end result is the more information you can get on the screen, the more effective the call handling is going to be. Now, as the supervisor of this screen, I can look at it and see immediately who's on calls, how long the calls have been holding. Maybe I've got that one call down there that's topped a minute, and I'm really worried about my SLAs. I can hit that call and redirect it to a priority queue, to myself, to somebody that a specialist based on the subject matter, or I can hit message and basically put them into a message-taking mode. So as anybody watching this queue, I can take the calls, I can send them to messaging, I can hold them, I can redirect them. Many more choices than just a typical ACD system that drops that call down on you as soon as you hang up from your last call. Now, the architecture here is a little different. Because we don't have a CTI link, we don't actually know when the agent hung up the phone from the phone system. The way this works is, as an agent, when I'm on a call, that next call button actually changes and shows as a hang-up button. So when I hang up my phone, I can click hang up on that button, and that'll close out the record. But I also could go to the status drop-down and put myself in a status. So maybe the kind of work we do is there's a phone call, and then there's a research piece. I could have a status called research. So when I hang up the phone, I would go and change my status to research, and that would show on the line now. And now I can go out online, I can find that patch and do all that work. And then I can connect via remote and solve that problem. When I'm completely done with the incident, then I hit hang up, and now I've closed that record off. And now my reporting shows that call, not only the phone time, but it will show wrap-up time, it'll show any other status time I've defined. So much better reporting for these groups that they need something a little more flexible than just how many calls and how long I was on there. And we have all that in reporting as well. But this is really key. Look for work groups that have different skill sets for the agents, and where this kind of information, this data, can allow you to be more efficient in how you handle the call. One other thing we include is the ability to do a screen pop. So if you have an application that your agents are using where the screen can be popped, once again, via a web service call, a stored procedure, COM API, something along those lines, what the agent does is when they're on the call, they highlight the correct column, and in this case I'm going to highlight callback number, and I have that little link at the bottom. I click on that link, and what it's actually doing is sending that number into whatever that app is. And this is just a phony line that I've dummied up here saying, I'm calling a web service, I'm pushing in the customer ID as the input field. Now what happens is as long as that program is capable of accepting that, then you get the screen pop for whatever you're using. So just like this is manually controlled routing on demand, this is manual screen pop on demand as well. But by doing it this way, we don't need any expensive additional data work to be done. We don't need a CTI link. We don't need anything beyond just kind of what's available in the client pieces themselves. So as a supervisor, I have a lot of tools. I have an agent monitoring tab. This is different than the call tab because this shows all my agents, whether they're on a call or not. So I get a quick glimpse and kind of looking at here and saying, okay, what's going on in my queue? And, you know, how many agents are busy? Somebody wants to go to lunch, I go over here real quick and say, oh, okay, I got a couple of people that are idle. We can go ahead and do that. And then on top of that, I've got call logs that have detailed information. I can look at the history of a call, when it came in, how long it waited, who handled it, what statuses were involved, and all of that, of course, gets wrapped up nice and tidy in a reporting package. There's 13 reports that are at a high level, detail level, and that have summaries. And they're the standard reports on the agent activities. So you can find out how many calls John took, what his average call length was. All of that information is available. So unlike the traditional push model ACD, this is a pull model based on the information gathered from those callers. And if you think of the kind of groups that when you bought your system and put in your big ACD system, you had groups where you said, well, hunt groups aren't perfect, but I'm not paying $1,500 an agent every year to have an agent license for that group. It doesn't make sense. They'll just have to live with a hunt group. Now you look at these kind of groups. Once you've deployed CX, there's an application module you put on that allows us to have custom apps, and then agent licenses are only $50. And supervisor licenses are only $250, and that's MSLP. So this can be deployed in areas where financially you just weren't gonna spend the money to put the more expensive real ACD licenses in. We're not looking to replace your large ACD for process workers. That's not really the value here. The value is for those informal work groups that have knowledge workers with personal workflow, a much more effective way to handle calls going into that group. Once you put the package in, by the way, with CXE, this is just one of the things we do. So in a Skype environment, we're going to be able to do voicemail. And there's voicemail issues with Skype. A lot of people don't want to store their messages in Exchange. That's one of the reasons Microsoft brings us in, because we have unified messaging where we don't store the message in Exchange. Automated attendant. The automated attendant in Skype is a little bit limited in terms of really full functional type stuff. And once again, we get brought in because our automated attendant is very full-featured. Custom IVR applications run on the same platform, and then the informal call center app that we looked at just now. So if you're evaluating Skype for Business, or if you've already started down that path and deployed it, if you have some of these issues we've talked about, then it might be good for you to give us a call and we can kind of talk you through how we could maybe solve some of those problems. And I think we're ready for questions.
We do have some questions coming in. If anyone has a question to ask that you haven't already submitted, you can find the question box. If you use that orange arrow, click on that in your upper right corner there. Okay, let's see. Neil, first question, are there limitations to where or how agents log in to their queue?
So when you go to log in, you need to have a connection from your Windows workstation to our system. Typically that's done either on the network internal or through a VPN connection external. Then the second thing you log in, it says, what's your phone number? You might use your extension if you're internal, but if you work afternoons at home, maybe you put a different extension in. Maybe you're going to use your Skype extension at home, or maybe you're going to use your mobile phone, or maybe you're going to use your home office phone. So as long as there's a number I can transfer calls to and a data connection between the client and CX, you can pretty much take calls anywhere.
Okay, great. Can a supervisor monitor multiple queues at the same time?
Yeah, so both an agent and a supervisor can be associated with multiple queues. So I could be an agent and actually be monitoring 2 queues at once. And if I do that, I set my screen up so that one of the entries for each line also shows me what queue it is.
Okay. Next question, do we have a call recording solution for the queue calls only?
Currently, we do no call recording at all. So if you're looking for a call recording, you'll have to look somewhere else to get that.
Okay, another question. Do callers have the option to leave a message in queue for an individual? Oh, sorry, callers in queue have the option.
So if I choose leave a message, that is programmed for where it goes. So typically if I called into this, I don't really know which agent I might have been getting. So we didn't give them a way to navigate through. So if I press leave a message, it's going to basically play the greeting for that mailbox, please leave your message for the tech support queue at the tone, beep, and that'll be it. Now, as an agent, if I look down at that call and I realize that we'll take that Bill call again. Bill's been holding, now this is his second call in, he's been holding for 3 minutes. I can take that call as an agent and send it to my personal mailbox. So as an agent, I can control that. But as the caller, when I say leave a message, it goes into the queue mailbox.
Okay, next question. At what stages during the whole process is the system tying up the CX ports?
Yes, that's a very important question. So if I call in and I am holding, so I've called in, I've answered my questions, my line entry's on the screen, and I'm waiting for an agent, I am tying up a CX port. At the point in time when the agent says take call, and it transfers me, even though the line entry is still on the screen, if I'm connected to the agent, the port has dropped off on the CX. If I call in and I choose the queue option, or queue for a callback option, then that port clears, and I won't be using, after that I won't be using a port on the call express either. This is definitely a discussion we have with how many calls do you think you'll have holding at any one time to make sure we have enough CX resources to do that.
Okay, is there a cloud-based version available?
Not at this time, although it is definitely something we're looking at, and we would be interested in having a discussion on that. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, we do these webinars on all of these solutions that we have, and there's always interest from somebody who says all they want is this feature. So they aren't interested in buying CXE, they just want this feature. And that's not really a very reasonable way to look at it, because today we have all this bundled together on a single platform. So you wouldn't today buy just TeamQ. You can, and we actually have some people that have done it, but it's generally meant to be an addition to all the other solutions we're providing on the platform. When we look at the hosted version, that will probably change, but I don't believe you'll see that this year.
Okay, next question. Can a supervisor force agents out of, say, training status if excess calls are coming in?
No, they can't change the status. They have the visual indication of it, but they would have to contact the agent and have them do it.
Okay. Are there supervisor tools to listen in, monitor, and barge in?
No, there's no audio recording or barge-in capabilities with this.
Okay, next. Can the number of calls in the hold queue be limited so as to preserve the ports? Follow on for the earlier question.
Yeah, so I can say how many ports are used for TeamQ. I can't say how many ports are used per individual queue. So if I have 3 different queues supported on TeamQ, I can't say these guys can only have 4. So it is a system-wide setting.
Okay, next question. Are there any workforce management integrations?
So today, the only thing that I have seen done, now we don't always know which ones get done because of the way we do it with web services. Customers can do these themselves. The only one I've seen done so far is Salesforce. But keep in mind, for the 2 things we do, which are going to be a data dip to bring information back, or to do a screen pop where we push the information in, those both tend to be simple interfaces to the working software, like Salesforce.com is an example. Salesforce.com has a web service where I can put in an account number and bring back the field username. And it likewise has a web service where I can push in some data, and it will open up the screen on that client's workstation based on the input I put in, like the account number. We haven't done serious custom development work between this product and any other workforce management tool yet.
Okay, thanks, Neil. So it looks like that actually wraps up the questions. If there's any,
I have one question.
Neil has a question for himself.
It's not really a question, but let me tell you what I can tell from these questions. And this is something we always have to be careful with. A lot of those questions make it sound like some of you are interested in replacing your existing ACD functionality with this offering, which in a lot of cases we can do. But keep in mind, this is not designed for that traditional call center workflow. When you start asking about recording and barging in and changing agent status, that's for process workers. If you think of an IT help desk, you're not going to do that with an IT help desk. Those people are much more self-managed than traditional ACD people are. So keep in mind, where this is really targeted is for these unique opportunities where you've got 10 to 20 people working in a group with different skill sets, and where the metadata is really the strength. The ability to route calls based on the differences between those calls is where the value of this application really shines.
Okay, thanks, Neil, for the clarification. So as I mentioned, it looks like we're wrapping up the questions here. If there were any questions that weren't fully answered or any follow-on questions, please be assured we do review those internally and make sure someone follows up. And as in addition, you can always submit any question to us at info@avst.com. So if you think of something else after we conclude here, you can certainly submit that there. I will send out an email today with the slides attached if you want to review those. And in addition, once the recording is available, we'll send that to you as well. Just want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on another webinar very soon. Neil, do you want to close us up as well?
I just echo those thoughts. Thank you for coming out. We know it's hard to carve time out of your day to do this. So please give us lots of feedback. If you send feedback to info@avst.com on whether these are helpful, whether they should be longer, whether they should be shorter, we really will tailor these to make sure you guys are getting what you need. So thank you.
All right. Thanks again. Have a great day, everyone.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.